Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Schumer has stated far more egregious things than anything Trump has ever said. Okay? Mashed Potato Brains Joe said worse, far worse to Charlemagne the God when he said, "You aren't who you are if you don't vote for him." And he was smiling at the camera too, knowing that immediately the Washington Post and others would go to bat and defend him, even though what he said would be considered, I mean, you could lose your job easily if Mashed Potato Brains Joe, if you said exactly what Mashed Potato Brains Joe said to Charlemagne the God 2 years ago. I mean, you would lose your job, and you'd be vilified on social media. But of course, the privilege that Democrats embody, he's able to get away with it and win. Yeah. And Chuck Schumer not only telegraphed everything the intelligence agencies were doing against Trump, like they said he's going to get you 10 ways, 12 ways to Sunday. I forgot the exact quote. But he basically told, it was on MSNBC, Chuck Schumer, it was like the beginning of Trump's tenure. I don't even think he stepped foot in the Oval Office yet. And Chuck Schumer said, oh, well, the intel agencies are going to go after him. And that they're going to get him back for going after them or saying something against them. Which, I'm sorry, intel agencies are run by taxpayer dollars. They work for the country. They have no right to side with Chuck Schumer or go after anyone that, insults them. They're not like, they're not a human being with feelings. They're bureaucracies that are supposed to simply ignore any rhetoric from anyone. But, again, that's the Democratic Party. It's the epitome of hypocrisy. Then they say, well, Trump lies so much. Here's 10,000 plus lies. Nobody lies more by omission than media. Now they're actually paraphrasing quotes. They're not even actually giving quotes. They're paraphrasing quotes. To where, like, when you see a title, oh, Trump said this, and it's like a paraphrase of what he said. You're like, what? Oh, it's not an actual quote. It's what the author, who is a lifelong liberal Democrat, thinks Trump meant or believes Trump to have stated within the context of what that wonderful, highly educated liberal journalist thought. And so you have insider Republicans blame Schumer for what took place with Justice Kavanaugh. Republicans blame Schumer. Oh, you'll never see Democrats blame Trump. You will see Trump's rhetoric leads to. Trump's rhetoric, Trump's words, Trump's this, Trump that, Trump saying this led to this. Newsweek, Schumer telling Brett Kavanaugh he'll pay the price for Roe resurfaces. I mean, it's unbelievable. Schumer tells Brett Kavanaugh he'll pay the price. Did Trump ever say you'll pay the price? Check this out. Did Trump ever say this? Quote, I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you'll pay the price, Schumer, who was then minority leader, said at the time. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. I mean, it's pretty clear cut. Democrats get away with everything. I mean, everything. Do you think conservatives or anyone linked to Trump or anything linked to Donald Trump would get away? Like, do you think that $1 to $2 billion in property damage when you had conservatives or conservative-leaning demonstrators, you think that would be allowed by media, or they would just, look the other way? Would they say fiery but peaceful as conservatives demonstrated and a building was set in flames behind the CNN journalist who said it was fiery but mostly peaceful, and the building's in flames behind him? You think that would happen? That is a form of deception. That is a lie. That's a lie by omission, which is hilarious because the optics were sad, pathetic, but also morbidly amusing. They're in such a cult that there could be a building in flames behind them, and they'll say, well, it's mostly peaceful. And by that logic, by that standard of logic, Well, then 2 years ago, that fateful day that Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and all these other Democrats are focused on, that was mostly peaceful. I mean, you take the aggregate number of human beings there, and then you just see how many people committed crimes. Well, then it's mostly peaceful. And by the way, I agree with the cause of why people were demonstrating that summer. I agree with the cause. However, no cause is worth $1 to $2 billion in property damage and 19 lives lost. While Democrats and media look the other way. I mean, everyone sees what takes place, ladies and gentlemen. I'm speaking in roundabout terms for, to address YouTube guidelines, but everyone knows the hypocrisy, the duplicity. I mean, it's this very bizarre, warped mentality where Democrats can say and do anything they like. They're not the authoritarians, but anything that Trump says, if something happens in the farthest reaches of the universe, well, it's Trump's fault. Definitely Trump's fault. He said something, and then something bad happened, so it's directly related to him. Hit subscribe, by the way, to this channel. Hit subscribe to the stock market crash channel and also the Bitcoin crash to 10,000 or lower channel. If you want to give a super thanks to this or any other segment, my super thanks is below. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a big, big story, and it's really sad, and it's unfortunate, really unfortunate, that we live in a world where Democrats want to make it more difficult for law-abiding citizens to protect their families, like much more difficult. And a California man shows up, California, strict laws, okay, shows up to Kavanaugh's home to do him harm. He now faces 20 years in prison, and the laws didn't stop that man. Laws are not going to vote blue no matter who, is not going to stop you from a maniac at that moment. You need to protect yourself and your family. Embrace the Second Amendment and do so lawfully. And the police are not going to be there. Law enforcement is not going to be there initially, at all times. And so at that very moment, you need to protect yourself. And believe me, Democrats understand that concept. They just don't want the average person to experience the benefits. They want to pay their armed security, go to any building, government building, courthouse. You certainly can't, just walk in to any government building in D.C. or anywhere. You certainly can't do that into a courthouse. No. But they expect, they are so horrified and indignant that you would want to arm or protect places like schools or places of worship or hospitals. Oh my God, is that the society we live in? Well, you didn't mind when you walked in the courthouse, going through the metal detector and seeing 10 armed security and police. You didn't mind that. So the courthouse should be protected. Government buildings should be protected. But the places that where the most innocent angels, the most important, most precious human beings and lives, where they spend their day, that shouldn't be protected. Oh, okay. The schools, no. But courthouse, yes. This is the wonderful world of the morally superior, happy Democrat living in the fantasy world where left-leaning politicians can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on armed security while they try to erase the Second Amendment. And after every tragedy, within a second of the tragedy, you see, we're right, laws would have protected people as they then pay their armed security and then go through metal detectors to get to their offices. You see, the laws would have protected people. You don't even believe that. You have armed security right before, long before you can get to any government official. But anyway, Chuck Schumer's words, the hysteria, influenced this deranged person. But again, we live in a world where the First Amendment, there are already laws protecting people from libel, defamation, and you cannot, if your words directly lead, if you tell somebody to do something, or you're directly involved through your words in some kind of horrible crime, then you will be tried in a court of law. You can't take Schumer to you can't sue him for this, just like you can't sue Trump. But Democrats when they look at Trump's words, it's like this performance art. Oh my God, look what he said. With Schumer and mashed potato brains Joe, they don't care. And that's the epitome of hypocrisy. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. Really terrible, terrible day. And says something about not only society, but also the left. Says something about them. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. Go to the stock market crash and the Bitcoin crash channel.